I'm Mike Ramacall, representing Minnetonka Schools.
Good evening, I'm Michael Bergman, I represent Edina Public Schools.
Brian Roth, representing West Tonka.
I'm Karen Arquette from Orono.
Keith Tate from Osseo Area Schools.
Kim Ross, representing Eden Prairie.
And Genestra, Wayzata Public Schools.
And Casey, proudly representing St. Louis Park.
And Shannon Andreessen, representing Hopkins Public Schools.
And Caroline Long here from Robbinsdale Public Schools.
Well, board members, with the busy lives, and we're all here tonight. That's great. Thank you. Before I ask for an approval of the agenda, I just want to acknowledge that we're here the day after the terrible events at Annunciation School in our community. I don't like, there's not words to really say, so I'm just gonna say that we're sending our thoughts and our love out. We know how triggering this can be for all of us in education, and those of us sitting at the board and administrators, we know how all of the kids that are in our care. And so it's very hard for people in our roles to see this happen, and for the folks, the teachers and the students and community members who were there yesterday. Just all of our thoughts and our love go out to those folks.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented. So moved by Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the agenda is approved. We have audience opportunity to speak. I don't believe we have anyone here for that tonight, do we?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vivian. Next, we have approval of our consent agenda, which contains just regular business items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Michael. Second by Kim. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye, and the consent agenda is approved. All right, we will take up Share the Success in recognition in October.
Yes.
All right, super. And so we'll head on to our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first I need to share that you have wonderful things in front of you. And we have, as you know, we launched a new logo designed by our communications department. And when we had our back to school event, Camille did Oprah and everybody got a lanyard. Lanyard, you also see stickers, so things on behalf of the communications department for doing that. Then I'll have also Carol come on up as we enter into our conversation of our strategic plan update. So one thing that we'd like to do, or that we do, is after the year is completed and all the data's in, we do a final report. We got to see a little bit of it in June. But this is the final strategic plan for the year one, last year's implementation. And it is absolutely a team effort, but I'll let you start and facilitate.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good evening, board members, and good evening, Superintendent Dowd. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. I'm here to share an update on our progress with the district's strategic plan. You have a copy of the report in front of you, and I'll be walking you through it with the help of a few of my colleagues. Don't be shy. Come on up. Joining me this evening are the strategic plan managers for each of our three theme areas. So it's Dr. Jonathan Voss, who's Director of Teaching and Learning. He'll speak on achieving academic success. We have Kiara Zachary, Director of Equity and Inclusion. She will be presenting on cultivating equity and inclusion. And Dr. Laura McClune, Director of Student Supports, will share an update on promoting social emotional learning. But before we begin, I want to recognize the many staff members behind the scenes. You heard a couple of them from Superintendent Dowd tonight, who really worked incredibly hard to help us achieve this year's goals. This is truly a team effort here at 287, and we are fortunate to have a really great leader in Superintendent Dowd. So while not everyone is here with us tonight who was part of this, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all those who contributed to this. I also want to say, and Superintendent Dowd did this as well, but I'm a big fan of this person. So I want to give a special shout out to my colleague in the communications department, Rachel Prost. Rachel has worked tirelessly over the past 2 years, capturing the heart of 287 community. And so throughout this presentation, you're going to see beautiful photography, and that's all from Rachel. It's not stock images. She's really just done a fantastic job. So it's featured in all the materials you have, including your reports as well. So I just wanted to give a kudos and shout out to her because she is definitely very talented. With that, I like to ground ourselves in our district's mission. And I know we did that earlier today, but I want to start with the mission because then we'll talk about our values and beliefs. And that's really what staff are doing in order for us to carry out and live out the mission of 287. So I just kind of want to tie those together. And then we'll be turning it over to John, Kiara, and Laura to give an update on year one of the strategic plan goals. So again, our mission is at Intermediate District 287, it's to be the premier provider of innovative specialized services, ensuring that each member district can meet the unique learning needs of its students. And so we are guided by 4 core values. Apologize, I forgot that I have the clicker. So inclusion, we believe inclusion exists when everyone has equitable access and the opportunity to be acknowledged and validated. Integrity, we believe integrity means holding ourselves and each other accountable for our actions. Trust, we build trust through honesty, reliability, and alignment with our values. And authenticity, we value environments where people can show up as their true selves and embrace the uniqueness of others. So these are the 3 theme areas of our strategic plan. I'm going to hand it over now to Dr. Jonathan Voss, and then followed by him will be Kiara Zachary, and then Dr. Laura McClune, and they'll each share progress updates in their respective areas.
Thank you, Camille. Welcome, everybody. In approaching our student goal setting this past year, we learned a great deal about all the different ways that goals are constructed and measured across different programs. And so just to review what those were, the first student goal was that each student will have an academic growth target and 80% of students will meet or exceed their growth target. For our staff, it was that during observations of scheduled planning time, 100% of classrooms and programs will show evidence of implementing our collaborative planning time guide for teachers, ASPs, and related service providers. And for the family and caregiver goals, a comprehensive system for communicating with families and caregivers regarding school and academic progress would be completed. So for this first student goal outcome, where each student would have an academic growth target and 80% of students would meet or exceed it, we saw some strong progress, especially among students who were enrolled for 42 or more days, but we did not necessarily meet that performance target. And the data showed a positive impact for goal setting. And as I mentioned, we learned a lot about how different goals are constructed and measured. Defining what constitutes a measurable academic goal involved a fair amount of attention from the start. There's a wide variety of goals that are defined within our individual education programs, within our continuous learning plans, and enrollment within specific courses. Some involve very discrete skills and others more general academic achievements. So things like communicating using 3-word phrases, improving letter sound identification, improving organizational skills and completion of work, identifying the main idea and supporting details in academic level reading, completing all assessments for credit in something like geometry, achieving expected growth in reading fluency was a major one for literacy, and creating a personalized course-paced learning goal to aid in completing a course was something we saw in our Northern Star Online program. The measures and tools for monitoring progress are equally varied and complicated. And so we also learned a lot about how to capture and synthesize that information to see where extra support was needed and to provide support to improve progress. We saw that the variety and complexity sometimes slowed our recognition of issues and led to either a prompt response or a little more time to consider what that response could be. So the success in meeting the goals also varied widely, in some cases depending on the framing and the timeline, and others on the level of progress monitoring and the response to that. and in others on the length of enrollment in a particular course or program. So we saw evidence that setting goals in itself helped improve the likelihood that students would meet their aspirations for completing an academic program or their academic plan. As a result, there are a few areas we'll focus on this year to improve on the process. Consistent progress monitoring on a weekly basis so that we can identify issues more quickly is one of the most important. And then developing consistent goal structures, particularly in literacy, where we can use more similar curriculum-based measures in fluency to gauge progress in reading and see when an adjustment may need to be made a little more quickly. If we've got more consistency, then our responses can be a little more rapid. And then more consistent intervention options that will be determined and implemented through our collaborative teaming, which is the next goal area. But providing a common system to report on those goals and processes is also something that we're working on so that the needs for support can be more readily recognized and communicated. Stop here or keep going? I just wonder if you want to take questions at each one or later. Okay.
You can keep going.
Okay. For staff, I mentioned our outcomes were that during observations of scheduled planning time, 100% of classrooms and programs would show evidence of implementing the collaborative planning time guide involving all staff, and that our outcomes showed that the elements of that process, as reported by the sites, show that there was high implementation of the structure with varying levels of success across some of those aspects. Again, we found that our sites and programs have many types of teams supporting students. And so our focus was on the process that the teams employ to effectively address areas of concern. We established a set of 6 key practices and worked with our site leadership to define their teaming structures, their agendas, their participation, especially involving related service providers, the use of the data review protocol we've established, and the development of action steps. All sites implemented the practices to some degree and refined their use over the course of the year. In reviewing the results, we've seen a need for a stronger use of data, both individual student and program or school-wide, to hone in on areas needing more support. In addition, we'll look more closely at intervention opportunities and how those practices are structured. And then finally, with our family caregiver goal, the comprehensive system for communicating with families and caregivers has been created and is now available on our website, also in additional languages. It shows a variety of ways that families can learn or hear about what goes on within their students' school and classes. Early feedback's been pretty positive, and the next steps will focus on awareness and improvement of the flow of information in each of those types of communication strategies. So we'll keep building on what's there. And then I'll turn it over to Kiara. Oh.
I have one or so. We're going back to the student goal. When we talk about the addition, when we talk about the results, the small but notable portion of students, 11%, has no recorded progress toward their goal. And then down below, you said key focus areas ensuring every student receives timely interventions when they are off track. Was there a particular core reason as to why maybe they weren't receiving timely intervention? Is that a capacity issue? Was that a communication issue? Was that a leadership issue that you see as the focus for this next year that would then enhance that result?
I would start with the progress monitoring part of it. That what we found was if there wasn't consistent either methods or follow through on the process, that knowing there was an issue wasn't coming to the attention of the people who could approach it. Sometimes it was that the goal was not set in a way that would allow for reasonable progress. And so how we set those goals again is something we want to keep coming back to. We worked a lot this year in identifying what is the data showing us that tells us that the instrument we're using is at too low a level or too high a level. Do we need to adjust that? Or do we need to adjust the intervention and the instruction? Or do we need to provide some additional support from other service providers?
Thank you. And then the other question I had was on the staff part. When you talk about there was a little bit of inconsistency, and I like your chart. That was a very helpful chart. Again, I'm just curious, was there any impact from a leadership standpoint in terms of, I know we've had some leadership changes in buildings and so on and so forth, even though those didn't happen to the end of the year, but do you see that as an impact to this sort of diversity, I guess, of level of part to that? And if so, is that something that we're working on, or is there another correlation cause for why you're seeing such across some of those elements that there's broad differentiation?
Yeah, I think the differentiation is either oversight, changes in leadership have to be more towards the end of the year, but we also have new leadership. And so in regards to monitoring and oversight and also that change, I would say it's always an impact.
Mhm.
We also can see it when there's teacher changes.
Yeah.
And so how do we build a system that is consistent and implement and monitor regardless of that type of change is our next step for consistency.
Thank you.
I just had one comment. First of all, I've implemented these before in different organizations, and I can really appreciate the amount of work it takes to define measurements and metrics and find the reporting, the data and the reporting that supports that and setting the goals as well. So year one, I'm sure was really difficult, and I'm sure, yeah, if you said that you understood how challenging that would be, I would maybe question that. So I appreciate all the work that you guys did to implement this, and hopefully, year two and so forth is a lot easier, and you'll get to the point where you can actually start to use it and rely on the data that you're getting out of it. My one comment is just do it right the first time so that you can actually and define the measurements correctly the first time so that you can actually rely on those measurements going forward instead of saying, well, maybe the result isn't actually reality because the measurement was set wrong or the metric was set wrong, and you have to go back and kind of redo it. So anyways, I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Effort.
Yeah, it was a lot to rein in and even identify up front. And we've already gotten a very good jump during workshop week on setting that understanding of what our goal basis is going to be, that using a common measurement process and tool for as many students as possible is the first layer. And then there's more layers, but with consistency at each one and what are we looking for and what are we looking at.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here to talk about our cultivating equity and inclusion goals and then our outcomes for this year. So just to review our goals quickly. So our student goal was around creating a digital catalog of all of our courses, sort of outlining what our educational opportunities are for our students. The staff goal was around really staff doing the work to recognize and celebrate each other's diversity. So hosting 2 culturally relevant educational opportunities, experiences, or performances for one another. And then the staff and caregiver goal is really a part of that communications grid that my colleague Dr. Voss talked about. And it's culturally relevant interpreting and translating resources to be provided for staff, so that we can ensure that families are able to access all of the information in that communications grid equitably. I am happy to report that we completed those goals. So I really look at the work of last year as creating the enabling conditions for our 5-year goals, right? So if students are going to have access to equitable access to all of the resources and opportunities at District 287, the first step or the enabling condition is that we list them. And that students are aware of what those are. And so on our catalog now, on our website now, we have a catalog for students that lists all of those courses. Those courses are aligned to standards, and it's not just for like our educational centers, but it's also for our Northern Star Online, West Suburban Summer School, our CTC program. It's exhaustive and extensive. All of the programming that we have to offer. One of the things that our students really wanted to know is like, what do I need to graduate? And we also wanted to make sure that it was readable, that our students could understand the information that was being presented to them too. And that was the work that we did 2 years ago, well, 2 school years ago. For our SAF goal, I think they knocked this one out of the park. I think they enjoyed this one the most. And it seems to me that when staff found themselves feeling like they were doing the work, when they could see students engaging in enriching activities and learning about either themselves or the people around them more. I think this work is really foundational, being able to normalize having conversations and celebrations about all of our backgrounds and differences so that we can be more intentional in deepening the work for this school year. Some of the most fun things I saw last year in regards to some of the culturally responsive events, students had art fairs, empowerment fairs. There were door decorating competitions. One of the ones that warmed my heart the most was at South Education Center for Black History Month. They had a school-wide Google Meet morning meeting, and students were able to either read a book by a Black author, and you were able to just log on to the Google Meet and listen in, or students did research and they were talking about the historical, teaching their peers about the historical figures that they learned about. So it's just a wide variety of things, but all of our equity teams did at least 2. I think when we counted, there was 40 something and we only needed like 16. And it was a very busy year for the team, but very enriching as well. And then lastly, for our family and caregiver goal, we did an audit of our translating and interpreting services, and we developed a process that's on our website. That is also our language access plan, which you will see right after this, I think. And it outlines the ways in which staff can use either paid or free resources, again, to ensure that families are able to receive the critical information to make the best decisions around how to support their students. We did see an increase as we implemented and shared our resources and expectations for staff to translate and interpret for families. We did see an increase in our usage, which is really good. It indicates that folks are following our processes, but also really intentional about planning and including our families. So, yeah, that's all I have.
Seeing nods and good work.
So, what percentage of students we estimate participated in those events?
Oof. To a certain degree, I don't know if there were any students that wouldn't have access at some point.
Okay.
I mean, we'd probably have to look at like attendance data for the days in which the event, right? Like, because they were mostly school-wide events.
Yeah. Okay.
we did track participation to a certain degree with each of them, but not on like a student-wide percentage basis,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
But I can't imagine that there would be a student that didn't receive an opportunity to participate in at least one.
That would be my assumption.
Yeah. Unless they just missed school on all the days,
Yeah.
right? Like I think we were pretty inclusive.
They're excessive.
Yes, they were accessible.
I just had a quick question about the student goal outcome.
Okay.
And just wondering how accessible, and I know you touched on it, that was part of the work, making the course catalog accessible to them.
Mhm.
Because I'm thinking in my mind, like how lost you can get and just a list.
Mhm.
So just wondering if you could speak that students, are there any students who don't really feel comfortable navigating digital information?
Yeah, so our first step isn't just to give the students, like, yes, our students have access to the catalog, but really it's in a collaboration with their case managers and with their counselors. And so we've been working this summer with counselors to show them the catalog first, and, you know, our instructional leaders and our teachers to show them the catalog first, so then they can be that support for our students, so they're not left to their own devices. It really is a collaborative process when students are registering for classes and creating their CLPs, or if they're on a credit driven diploma, to align what they need with their IEP goals and all of those things. So yes, they can have access to it. And the other beautiful part is that it's not a standalone document. The catalog is embedded into our website, which has a number of accessibility tools, so screen readers and a number of other things. So students, even if they access it by themselves, they should be able to navigate it easily.
Thank you.
So with the staff goal, did you just
Back up and.
All right, good evening, Superintendent Dowd, Chair Casey, members of the board. I am so excited to be here tonight. As all of my colleagues in the room, we're coming off of probably one of the busiest weeks of the school year. We've been in every single building, providing lots and lots of trainings. So I've been really steeped in our social emotional learning work, and it's actually fun being here tonight, being able to talk about our year one goals, because we're so entrenched in the planning work of implementation for our year two goals that it's given me the opportunity to reflect a little bit and see just what strong and intentional scaffolding went into place as we developed the strategic plan. I'm starting year two in the district, and so I kind of stepped into this work after those year one goals were established, and I can see the through line, and it's been really exciting to just see the ways that we're connecting and partnering across all of the departments to ensure that we really are enhancing all of our work, right? With social emotional learning, we're not just talking about these separate skills and competencies that are over here. We're making these really meaningful ties to employability skills, those measurable post-secondary goals that our students have. And so it's been a really fun week. So Excited to talk a little bit about our year one goals. So as you can see on the slides and in the report in front of you, our year one goal, similarly to the achieving academic success goal, was around student goal setting. We, just as a reminder, identified our tier 2 elementary, middle school, and ALC programs as that starting point last year, because those were the programs that we had identified a tier 1 universal curriculum for. We knew that that's a difficult thing to do. And so starting with all of the programs was just too heavy of a lift. And so we started with those programs and really started actively working with our students around goal setting. Our staff goal was around a universal onboarding system for new staff. And then our family caregiver goal was really focused on ensuring that we provided a minimum of 4 social emotional learning based opportunities for families and caregivers to attend throughout the school year, where we could really focus on providing more in-depth information around what we're doing and how we're really providing that true skills instruction for our students so that they can grow in each of those competency areas. Not able to turn the slide now. Thank you. So our student goal, like I said, was really focused at that tier 2 elementary, middle, and ALC, those groups of students. So the goal was that students in those programs will develop their own social emotional learning goals, self-monitor progress, and confer with staff. So we really engaged with our teachers throughout the year last year, making sure that they had tools and were really equipped to not only be implementing the curriculum that was selected with Fidelity, but then also really using those tools and engaging with students to do some goal setting. And we just saw some really fantastic things happening in the classrooms. I think I mentioned this when we gave the update in the spring, but this is happening so frequently in our classrooms, right? I think organically our students and teachers are interacting with one another, setting goals. And so the ability to be more intentional with this and really track it gave us an opportunity to see areas in which we just want to continue to enhance this work. So we saw goals kind of across the board, because this was really focused on giving student voice and making sure that they had some autonomy as they were setting their goals. We always want to be rooted and grounded in our equity work and ensuring that when we're talking about social emotional learning, we're not talking about compliance. We're not talking about expecting students to sit quietly in classrooms, raise their hands. We want students to be able to show up authentically as who they are. And so when we're working on these skills for self-awareness, self-regulation, that we're really teaching students strategies that are going to work best for them and in the communities, in the context that they find themselves in. So like I said, we found ourselves with a really wide range of goals across the board, but they were wonderful. I mean, we saw students, really wanting to focus on their own sleep hygiene or managing their social media use, or some of our younger students even just really, having goals around wanting to be able to join a group for morning meeting and stay regulated. And so it was really fun to kind of dig back through this feedback. So we did meet this goal. Our goal was that 80% of students would be setting their own goals, self-monitoring progress, and conferring with staff. And we were closer to that 90% mark across the board. So we're really looking forward to this year. We aligned, going into our year 2 goals, we aligned the student SEL goal a little more tightly with the academic achievement goal. So it's really going to be focused on students meeting or exceeding an identified SEL goal. So we're going to be very much more focused on those growth measures and that progress monitoring, similarly to academic achievement. So we're excited about that. We have, like I said, I've spent this whole week just hanging out with different teaching teams, talking about SEL competencies, what those learning goals look like, and what benchmarks are for specific skills, and how we can incorporate student voice, how we can engage students in self-assessments and that goal setting. And so teachers are really excited. I feel really excited going into this year. I think sometimes we come into workshop week with lots of things that we're putting on teachers' plates, but people, like I said, are excited, and we're really, like I mentioned before, able to see that through line, making sure that we're making those tight connections, that we're really identifying, right? These skills that you're learning in social emotional learning areas are going to allow you to better access your academics and find success in school, and then any post-secondary education employment that students will access. The staff goal was a little bit different. This was the one that was focused on that universal onboarding system across the district. We just in looking at retention rates and the feedback that we get from staff as they leave our system, we know that we needed to heighten our training for staff when they're new to our system before they go into our schools. And so we were really focused this year on implementing a universal onboarding system that would include mentoring and a minimum of 8 hours of understanding disabilities, mental health, trauma, and de-escalation. We also met this goal and saw a lot of success. We developed a 3-day onboarding system, and I think you guys have the schedule outline in your report. This was implemented throughout the year last year, and we were able to be really responsive and make adjustments throughout the year. So we saw a number of iterations of this, and it really felt like a true collaboration with all of our departments across the system, that we were really able to highlight the really key things that we know staff need before they enter our buildings. And so you can see kind of that example of what that looked like. There's just the general human resources onboarding, the health and safety components. We had opportunities for the union overview and then our district essential training modules that all staff have to do. On day 2, we were able to provide some time for staff to complete the personal care assistance and community first services and support certification components that are necessary for some of our positions. And then we had opportunities for all staff to complete the online modules and the in-person CPI training so that before any new staff member would even set foot in our buildings, they were trained in our de-escalation strategies and all of those great behavioral response tools to ensure that they could be successful in working with our students. We also were able to provide some really intentional instruction around trauma in the brain. So really teaching our new staff what the impact of trauma is and what that could look like in students' development and how then we respond to students when we're engaged in the school-based setting. And then we were also able to build in some time to really do some intentional work around restorative practices. And so all of the new staff that came in were actually able to sit in a community building circle and experience that for themselves so that they know what students experience in the classrooms, and then also had that really strong modeling so that they could take that with them. We are going to, excuse me. Oh, you are. I thought I was pressing buttons. So we're going to continue with that work. We're looking forward to really extending that with our year 2 goal, really focused on retention rates for those staff that are within the first year. We know that we just want to heighten and continue to provide really strong mentorship and onboarding for our staff. So we'll continue with that 3-day onboarding model, and then are extending that into really specific additional training requirements that will be provided for staff within the first 30, 60, and 90 days of their employment. The family and caregiver goal then was around those 4 social emotional learning based opportunities. We started the school year with an event at North Education Center. We had about 30 families come, and it was a really great opportunity to just lay the foundation for what we're doing with social emotional learning. We focused on the curriculum that we were rolling out, talked a lot about goal setting. It was a really fun event. We had a bunch of breakout rooms and had opportunities for parents to join, or parents, families, caregivers to join a group. And then we had some spaces where students could stay and really engage in some different sensory activities. We received a lot of questions that first night about where's my student's teacher? Where's my student's principal, right? Because this was a district-wide event. And so we really realized that as we move forward, we want to make sure that we're embedding this content into the site-specific family nights, these district-wide events. I think any of us could agree, right? Like driving across the cities to a school that's not yours doesn't feel as welcoming and as personal. And so we tried to make those adjustments throughout the year. And we really do look forward to embedding more of that content in all of the school's family nights as we go throughout this school year. In December, we also had an opportunity to partner with South Education Center. We had Dr. Abdi from the Somali American Partnership came to meet with families, or our plan was for her to come and meet with families. Unfortunately, she was held at an airport due to a bad weather and wasn't able to make it. And so we reached out to families and let them know, but we still did have a couple of families come just to choose to engage in community building with us. And then we were able to reschedule that to February, which was a really great event. We we intended to really focus the remainder of our SEL family nights on different populations of families that we've really heard from as we've reached out for family and caregiver feedback, just that are looking for that greater sense of community with one another. And so in February, we were able to host that at the South Education Center, and really had a great turnout and had an opportunity for families to engage with one another. And we received a lot of positive feedback. And so we're going to continue with some of those groups as we go into this school year. Our final event, we were really focused on students or families of students who use augmentative communication devices. We have been really intentional as we've been planning for our curriculum implementation this year for students in our Tier 3 programs. We want to make community building circles and restorative practices accessible to all of our students. We want to make sure that we're building those same social emotional learning skills in students in all of our programs. And so we held a virtual event, and unfortunately, only one parent was able to come, but since that time, we did record the session and we were able to share it out. So a couple of our speech pathologists did a phenomenal job really walking through how we can really intentionally build those SEL competencies with our students who use those AAC devices and with different assistive technology. So it was a really fantastic event. We're looking forward to hosting more things like that in the future. We have had a lot of conversations with our site admin teams around what are really truly finding out what their families are looking for in terms of this content. We don't want to just create events that are sit and get and hear from us. We want to know what's going to be really meaningful for families so that when they come, they can get some additional resources. We are also working closely with our school-based mental health providers to provide some specific sessions as well. We've heard from a lot of families, that it's helpful to have access to different breakout sessions during family nights and conferences. And so we're looking to offer a few opportunities that would be, what's the difference between stress and anxiety, and when should I be concerned for my child, things like that, with our licensed mental health providers. So we're looking forward to that in addition to some of the general social emotional learning content. Any questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, I love the quote from Shyla about like the sort of self-awareness, right? I do okay with it, but I think that, some people could use a little bit more support in how this goes out. So I appreciated that a lot, and just including some of the direct student voice in this was much appreciated.
We had some really fantastic focus groups with students throughout the spring as we were selecting the Tier 1 curriculum for the other programs. And it just to kind of echo what you said, it's just fantastic when we give students that autonomy and ability to speak into their own education. So we're looking forward to that continued work.
Not really a question, but just a comment that I feel like these are such amazing goals and so important and often overlooked. And in particular, this is like the foundation of how kids are able to at the rates that they cycle. And so I just impressed the care in which this was done, and the way that you are systematizing it, tying it back to the G-READ data. Hold on. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort. I think we're all just really excited about the direction that we're going, and so grateful to have your support with these theme areas as we continue our work.
And I would just add to that one of the things I think that's also impressive about the report is that it's giving an honest assessment of where we were successful and where we still have some work to do. I can't tell you that of all the things I see in education, both in my home district and here, K7 does a really wonderful job of owning where they're at, and knowing that we want to continue to keep moving the ball down the field to where we want to go. And you're stating it that way. That is incredibly transparent and refreshing, because it's not meant to open up the floodgates of criticism or issues or whatever. It's more of, we've taken this step. This is meaningful to us. And when we don't quite get where we want to go, this is how we're going to continue to work on it. We're going to keep making that happen. I'll be honest with you, I don't hear that enough in this industry. And so I just really wanted to compliment leadership and the team for embodying that. That's just really great focus. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been so impressive to look at and just how well it's communicated and put together. I have one question on the slide for goals and outcomes for promoting social and emotional learning, the 3-day orientation schedule. So just kind of going forward, we had orientation a few days ago. For next year, some goals, some aspirations you might have for what orientation could look like a year from now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what we really attempted to do, so prior to when all staff come back with workshop week, we have what we call New Staff Academy, which I'm sure you've all heard of. And we really tried to replicate that. So then all new staff, no matter what time of year they're hired, they're able to get access to that same level of onboarding and all of that same information. And so that was really our goal last year with providing that new staff onboarding or the orientation twice a month. And so that's something, like I mentioned before, we are planning to continue into this year, but then also really extending that with stronger mentorship programs for every one of our groups. So when we think about, for our ESPs, our licensed teachers, our leaders, making sure that we really have that strong mentorship component is another layer that we're adding to that. And then, as I mentioned, really those job specific additional components that we want to make sure that staff have been trained in within the first 30, 60, 90 days. And so this year, we're really going to be continuing our work and ensuring that some of our positions that are, I supervise our chemical health counselors, and we have 2 in the system, and we have a new one this year. They require such a different and unique level of onboarding in that first couple of months with us. So we're really working to tease that out and make sure that then beyond that universal orientation and onboarding, we have really job specific supports that are in place.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly drawn to, you're really putting a focus on mental health as well as de-escalation. That's really good to see now. Grateful for it.
It's really critical, and we've just seen a lot of success. And just anecdotally, we've heard from so many staff that it's really beneficial before they enter into our buildings, that they really have somewhat of a foundation of really understanding trauma, brain development, mental health.
Thank you. The biggest thing when you look at these goals do not go away. The next step is this becomes our everyday work. And we're just going, how do we keep refining it? The neatest part about the onboarding, it's the universal onboarding. And so everything that we're doing, we're building systems. So no matter when you're hired throughout the year, and there's an onboarding, and then there's mentoring, and that 30, 60, 90 days is really truly a plan based on your position. And what is the district going to do? And what is the site going to do within those 30, 60, 90 days? And then we have a universal system that is developed to say, how will we collect that data and monitor implementation? And so all behind this, even though we talk about these goals, what I think is so neat is the team coming together, developing and going, okay, we need a better way to capture academic goals. So we can monitor that they're actually measurable. We can say, what would progress monitoring look like? And we can say, what would success look like? And so the neatest thing for me going into the summer retreats with leadership is looking at the building goals, defined and measurable and inclusive, like the growth that this district has done in a year on student goals, site goals, and individual, we each have individual goals. I am so impressed by every staff member and the growth around this area. And so therefore we can have better data systems to say, this is a measurable goal. Here's how we will measure it. Because if you don't define that right away, then we can all look at the data in a different way and make different narratives. So it's so fun to see the team thinking like this and not, yes, we're in the field of education, but how do we measure success and individual success for all the students that we serve? And I can't commend this team and our leaders and our sites. What a growth the year has been. So just want to add that.
Thank you very much.
Before I move on, any other questions? This team is amazing. I mean, that was awesome. I know there's nothing else to say. This is amazing. Well, you saw our goals and approved them back in May. And so I was just going to kind of briefly go through those again. But before that, like Marcy was saying, I mean, we've had so many amazing staff members really working hard, digging deep into how can we make sure that we are achieving academic success, cultivating equity and inclusion, promoting social emotional learning. This was our team this past year who chose to meet and do some of that hard work on behalf of all of our staff and all of our sites. And so we're excited to welcome some new members for this year so that we can start developing the next year's goals. So here are the goals quickly. This year, we're organizing our goals by audience to better show how our efforts across themes are interconnected and moving us closer to our 2029 vision for Q87. So you have these in your report. I even did a one pager. I updated the one from last year with this year's goals, so you have it in front of you. But the student goals this year are really about more student voice and achieving rigorous goals. So like Marcy was mentioning, the progress monitoring, the weekly formative assessment, we're going to get even better at doing that this year to ensure that every single child is achieving their academic goal. For staff goals, this is really about, and you heard Laura talk about this a second ago, it's retention, it's teaming that you heard John talk about earlier, and then more reflection this year on our identities as staff and the identities of others and understanding the students we serve. So that's what really these staff goals are about. And then the family goals, we only have 2, but we saw that team, the focus area work group, really saw alignment with achieving academic success, family goal, and the promoting social emotional learning family caregiver goals. So we brought those together. And these are really about strengthening relationships with families. That's what you're going to notice here, and really having family voice and families as partners with us in their child's education. So that's what these goals are about. That is it. Any other questions? We're excited to get started on Tuesday. We've actually already started back in June. But yeah, we're excited. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, some goals. Yeah, we're gonna keep talking about goals.
Madam Chair. So, you'll see as part of my evaluation, the superintendent develops a goal. And the strategic plan is really a lot of my work. And supporting the implementation, supporting any barriers that are not working, and ensuring that we're doing what we said we were going to do. And so when Chair Casey and I talked about it, the strategic plan has student goals, it has staff goals, and it has family and caregiver goals. And in essence, I'm responsible to ensure those get done, that our students meet their goals, their staff, and our family and caregivers. And so I also identified just action steps of what I do to support the strategic plan. There is a team, the focus area group, and there's many people involved. But this year I'm going to do a little bit more of systematic classroom observations and implementation. And so I'll develop just either meeting with the principals and or with the leaders that are part of it, walking through ensuring implementation of the progress monitoring, ensuring implementation of the goals, and just getting a glimpse across the district of implementation to help support deepening our skills in it. Attending directors, we merged some meetings and brought together the directors that lead the goals, meet on a regular basis now, and really talking about implementation. Where are teams at? What are teams struggling with? Is there a site that's having difficulty getting the student goals into the system? How are we as a district wrapping around and ensuring that attention is given so that students can meet their goals? We also reorganize our strategic implementation team to really look at the tasks behind accomplishing those goals. And so Camille and I will be running that. And then the focus area work groups that we've had before, review and meet with leaders on implementation data. So now that we're getting data and that we're getting it consistently, diving into it, so that no matter who leaves, that data stays, the system stays, and we can really look at progress monitoring and looking at disaggregated data, practicing it, modeling it, even at the superintendent level, so that we can see our leaders do it, our teachers do it, like it just becomes who we are. And provide strategic plan updates with IOL. The other part besides just the goals and activities in our instruction, IOLs are instructional and operational leaders. We meet monthly, and I also do on the goals and our values and beliefs, targeting a value and belief. What does that mean? How do we act together? Right now, we're in integrity. Last year, we did trust. And so we're talking about what does integrity look like, and how do we hold ourselves and each other accountable? Because sometimes when you're being held accountable, it doesn't feel really good. It's like, how do you do it? And how can you enter into a courageous conversation as, hey, we need to get this done. We agreed to this plan. What do you need from me? But not that shame, blame, or guilt. It really is, we are tight to a timeline because it impacts kids. So what do you need so we can do what we need to do? So students, teachers, staff, do every single day. So this year I lead that professional development or trainings around each of the beliefs. So those are my goals for this year. Or that's my goal for this year, my action steps that are part of it. Questions, comments? Yeah, Caroline.
So then we will have like a mid-year review of this plan and then an end year.
Yeah, we'll always do a mid-year, kind of where we are. We also do it with our focus area work group, so they know the data mid-year, like what's working, what's not, what are some things that we need to adjust system-wise for the rest of the year. Yep, so you'll get a mid-year review and then the year.
Everybody's happy with it.
Okay, all right.
I mean, we have talked about the strategic plan a lot. We are, I think, that this board is supportive and that, I mean, I think I really just appreciate you taking that on as your goal, right? That's your job. But also I really appreciate the kind of breaking your role down so that we can kind of see what your role is, because everyone in this organization has a role in this strategic plan and this is yours. So thank you for breaking it out like that. Any other?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that approaching it this way makes the evaluation process very objective. And I mean, it's something, the way we work in EPs similarly in that the superintendent's evaluation is based on the monitoring of all of our board policies. And if they're in compliance and we're hitting the goals we set around student achievement, so be it. I mean, but it's very objective and data-based. And I think, ultimately your success and effectiveness is borne out by the results of the organization. So it makes a ton of sense.
So we have approval of this as an action item of these goals. So, is there a motion to approve the superintendent's goals for the 25-26 school year as presented?
So moved.
I heard Karen and with the motion, and then Shannon, will you take the second? Yes. All right. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair votes aye, and the goals are approved. Where's the more? Okay, we have Camille again, right? Okay, for our language access plan report.
Hello again, and oh, I can share it with you. Yes. Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity to present the language access plan for intermediate district 287. So this plan reflects our district's deep commitment to equity and inclusive communication. It ensures that language is not a barrier to family engagement, student success, or access to critical information. Our goal is simple, that every student, every caregiver, regardless of language proficiency, should be able to fully participate in their students' education. So tonight, I'll just walk through a high-level overview of the plan and how it's grounded in law and aligned with district values, how services are accessed, and how we equip staff to implement it effectively. So we'll begin by looking at the why this plan matters and the foundation on which it's built. So the plan details the processes for effective language assistance. So that's interpretation, translation, or any additional assistance due to a disability. And that's to meet the diverse language needs of the community. Therefore, everyone has meaningful access to our district's educational programs, services, and activities. And our work is grounded in federal and state mandates. And these laws require timely and effective language support services. So under the law, the school board actually reviews and approves this plan every 2 years to ensure that it evolves alongside the needs of our community. By supporting language access, we aren't just supporting families with limited English proficiency, we are really strengthening the entire educational ecosystem. So the core services, this slide really highlights those components of the plan, which is the interpretation and translation services. Interpretation is available in both spoken languages and American Sign Language. It's offered in person, over the phone, or via video. And these services are available for scheduled meetings as well as urgent or unplanned situations. This also would go for disabilities. So if somebody needs something due to a disability, we accommodate for that as well. Translation refers to written materials that we have. We proactively translate vital documents such as handbooks and registration forms, and we translate those into our top preferred languages based on our student information system, which is Spanish, Somali, and Hmong. To maintain high standards and ensure accurate communication, the plan prohibits the use of untrained interpreters, including students, staff, or family members or caregivers, and it discourages the use of tools like Google Translate. The plan also includes best practices for interpreters, especially in sensitive contexts like IEP or due process meetings, to protect student rights and support clear communication. So we ensure that staff across the district have access to the tools and guidance they need to request and deliver these services appropriately. You heard Kiara talk about that earlier in our strategic plan work. We have free resources available for staff, and then we have a district-wide sponsored certified translation and interpretation service that we use, as well as ASL interpreters. So in our language access plan, we also have ways of identifying language needs. We talk about language access really begins with identifying needs accurately. So during enrollment, families complete the Minnesota Language Survey, which helps us determine a student's home language and whether they may qualify as a multilingual learner. At the same time, families indicate their preferred language for communication, which is recorded in our student information system and can be updated at any time. This allows for our schools to tailor communications and offer the appropriate services from the outset. Interpretation and translation services can be requested by staff, families, making the process really flexible and responsive that anyone can request this need or these services. Additionally, new this year and part of this plan is that each school has a visual signage and tools like this point to your language sign that you see here. So at our front desks across the district, everyone has these large posters so that anyone coming into our buildings can point to what language they need to be communicating with. Our goal is to make accessing language services simple, consistent, and readily available throughout the district. How the services are delivered. So District 287 offers multiple options for interpretation. So there's in-person, phone-based, and video remote. These formats provide flexibility depending on the situation and urgency. And these services are free of charge and available for both educational and administrative interactions, such as enrollment meetings, conferences, behavior meetings, or support services. We also support families with written translation. So in addition to providing commonly requested documents in multiple languages, we offer a district website that is translatable and communication tools that automatically send emails and texts in a family's preferred language. So we've built in systems that allow two-way translated messaging between staff and families, promoting real-time accessible communication. That tool that we're using is called Talking Points. I think maybe some of your districts use that as well, or maybe you've used it yourself as a parent. And that's to maintain trust and accuracy. We, again, discourage the use of Google Translate. We no longer use that or any other unapproved tools, and instead ensure all staff are trained in the approved process for assessing these supports. And so again, that was relating back to what Kiara was talking about in the strategic plan. We have the process available on our website for staff, and we've communicated it all summer so that they know and that they're ready and equipped to have the tools they need to do this work. And then the roles and support. So language access is a shared responsibility. Every staff member, from teachers and front office personnel to administrators, they have a role in ensuring that families receive timely and accurate language services. Our multilingual program coordinator and family and community engagement specialist play a key role in directly supporting families and equipping schools to better meet the needs of our multilingual communities. Importantly, the plan is reviewed and recommended again for approval every 2 years by the school board and shaped by input from staff and families. We will go out and we'll get input from our staff to find out how well is this language access plan working for them. And we'll make sure that if there are any changes that need to be made, those are done before they come back here to the school board for approval in 2 years. We are committed to continuous improvement here and welcoming any questions, suggestions, or feedback that you might have on the language access plan. I realize that was a lot of information, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to get all of that out for you. So
And like you said, it is.
So in the last part, when you're talking about the roles, support, and so on, not that I wish to have more need for another administrative data metric kind of element. But given the importance of this, are we gonna track what the requests are that we're seeing and understanding what the number is and what the frequency is and from that standpoint, so that as we look at the 2-year process, we see how we're actually measuring up and the success of that?
For translation.
yeah, increase. Mhm.
Coordinated translation. And then we can also set uses of our tools that we're. Actually, we'll have that data for you for a year.
Great.
They do. Are you talking about the one where they track the languages and everything? Yes. So we can also pull a report that shows exactly like, was it interpretation, was it translation, and in what language? So we can pull that information as well. So we'll bring that data next time.
Will there be a survey like for when you have like multilingual learner identifications and families preferred, whatever it is? Will we touch back with them on some regular basis, sort of through the year, whatever it is, as to how they're receiving that sort of part? Because this is, first of all, this is amazing. This is, I'm actually looking at this. I'm probably gonna take this and go back to Edina, give it to Dr. Bittman and say, hey, you're new. I should know this, but I don't. What is our approach? Because I know we struggle with this significantly. So this is awesome. So my questions are only about how to measure the impact of it.
Right.
I think that's really important for us to share.
So part of our strategic plan is that we have family groups providing feedback. And so why we have student groups and we have family groups by each site and by each program. And that was intentionally organized to, one, provide feedback on items like this, as well as improve policies around curriculum review, and you need parent groups, you need student groups, so those policies around curriculum and instruction. That is how these are all tied together for feedback loops.
And I would think the only other thing that I didn't say, but I'm assuming it's already there, it's also from the staff standpoint.
Yeah.
So that when you're actually in an IEP meeting or you're doing some other kind of coursework, how that service is then helping the staff that's not their native language, how are they able to make that connection from that standpoint? That would be amazing.
I think the usage of talking points will be critical in the sense of maybe staff will feel more comfortable with a text application. And so we're hoping to see more communication going back and forth in native language for Coleman School. So usage will be huge on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the language access plan was something new that came out of legislation, that each district is required to have a language access plan. Ironically, we are so brilliant at District 287. It was part of last year's strategic goal.
That's not ironic, that's just, that's not my goal, it's why it's so good.
No, I know it.
So we were prepped
We were ahead.
to implement this new law because we had a year of plan.
Carolyn,
I was just wondering what portion of the special ed documents are translated for families?
Do you want to share? So, you want,
Go ahead.
so, evals, IEPs, prior written notices. Can either be translated or oral by parent choice. Is there anything else I'm missing significantly? The main three.
We leverage that MD documents as translated. Yeah. You can probably speak to it better because you researched it with our
Yeah.
team, but we leverage those as well. But what we find is that having, we're looking at the parents to give us their preference. Often they will want us to have the IP interpreted to them through an interpreter.
as
So-
opposed to translated,
Yeah.
okay.
So the law around that is if you do that without the written, you need to provide contact information.
Yes.
So if they process later and have questions. So that's.
And it should go without saying, right, that we, of course, got more money for translation services in the last budget, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was a joke.
That was-
Could you
Yeah.
have any other follow-up?
That's okay.
So team every night.
I really appreciate and think the guidance around reliance on unpaid students, siblings, friends, or staff to interpret is not acceptable. And my personal request would be as this is, the continuous improvement. It should be the same for translation. It should not just say it for interpretation, which I think the way it reads, it's just for interpreting.
Okay, yeah, we will add that. Very good point, because it is both. And we have communicated to staff the prohibited things, if you will. And so that's also listed on our website. But yeah, I'll make sure that we have translations included in that. We have also communicated to staff that under this law, if they do speak Spanish, Somali, Hmong, or a language and they want to interpret, they have to be certified. They have to go through our Department of Special Education to get that certification. So the law does allow for that, but it has to be a certified trainer. So we've communicated that because I think, there are some folks, I'm sure, who step in sometimes and that's no longer allowed.
Thanks for that context. I think it's important, because I think in the past, districts often rely on their staff to do this on top of the job they were hired for.
Mhm.
And I am wondering, how are you achieving your website translation?
We use a platform called Wegolot. So it's a little bit, it's not Google Translate. It's hard for me to define what it is, but it's a different, it's just not Google Translate. I just want to tell you that. We did look into that and made sure that they don't use that. We do have, unfortunately, Google Translated is embedded in some of our platforms that we use, but we again have encouraged staff to not rely on those. Go to Transact, parent notices that the state has paid for and offers to us for free instead of using what might be in one of our platforms that could be translated by Google Translate. And I think it's also important to hear that this came from families too, even before the law. Like the law happened after the fact, but when we did our engagement with families, they told us our translations don't make any sense in Somali. They say this, it's so out of context. And so I always remind staff that it's not just the law, but we're hearing from our families that they don't understand what we're saying. So we need to make sure that we're getting that information out to them that in the way that makes sense to them, it's culturally appropriate. So, yeah.
God, I will take a motion to approve the latest assessment as presented. By Shannon? And by Mike?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Be opposed? Chair votes aye, and the language assessment is approved.
Thank you. Thanks. Yep.
All right, next up, we have Brian Schultz and our routine monthly finance report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Superintendent Dow, board members. So as she's pulling up the presentation, I'm just gonna give a reminder. So quarterly, we do a presentation, just a quick presentation on some of the materials that you have in the board packet. And then the other 2 months of each quarter are just on the consent agenda for approval, but you get to see those. It's a lot of the same information, just not in a presentation format. And then with June, she has it pulled up here. As we go through, right, June's our end of year, all of the other ones, we do a close of the month, but it's really on a cash basis, right? It's cash in, cash out with our expenditures and revenues. Same thing with June that you're seeing here, but it's really the close of our fiscal year, right? We're starting our audit process now. We're working through that. So there's going to be a lot of accrual entries for payables, accrued salaries, benefits, as well as a lot of receivables for our district, right? We do have a lot of invoicing that happens. So that's why you'll see here as we look at the revenues, right? As of now, we're 80% of our budgets collected at this point in time, which is, you would think was pretty low when you're thinking of your traditional district. Well, that's because we have a lot of invoices that are outstanding, that we're doing final billings with our member districts and not member districts. So those will be getting collected and that number would go way up. As I've noted here, it's slightly below where we were, but it's not a concern. We're close, and we'll have a bunch of receivable entries that will happen as part of the audit process. So then the expenditure side, that's a little bit closer. As we go through the year, there are some payables and accrued liabilities, but a lot of that happens during the year. So there's not a lot of that happens after June or that gets paid after June. So that's why you're seeing about 96% of the expenditure budget has been expended as of June, which is very similar to where we are in the past 2 years. For investments, we started the year at about 24 million with our regular investments in the general fund. We received about 91,000 in interest and dividends. We're still making relatively good interest rates and returns on our cash that's available to invest that we don't need at the moment. I know they're talking about an interest rate reduction, which will have an impact on some of the returns that we'll see in the future. But for now, we're still seeing good returns. We took a draw out of our investments of 5 million just for cash flow purposes during the year. So we're still at about $19 million with our regular investments. So a great, strong balance with investments. We also have our LTFM, our long-term facility maintenance construction fund investments. That will be getting spent down a little quicker here as you start to see the July, August reports as we're doing a lot of our summer work. So a lot of that during the school year slows down, so we don't spend very much. And then big projects this summer. So that'll mostly get spent down this summer. There'll be a little bit left for a few more projects, but we'll get pretty close later this fall. Cash flow, showing the last 3 years, just to kind of give you an idea where we're sitting on the cash flow, right? We're a little more reliant on our cash flow. So it's nice to have a good cash balance. It's based on if we're receiving our invoice payments on a prompt basis. So as you can see, the green bar is the fiscal 25. So you can see we started out the year really high with the fiscal 25 compared to the last couple of years. And that was really the state takes your CEDRA data, which is a lot of where our money comes from, to build out what your cash flow is going to look like from MDE. And ours was a little bit over-reported when they pulled that amount, and it was part of it was staff absence and so forth at that time. We got that corrected, and that's when you see then the state comes back at a certain time. They readjust what the cash flow or metering is going to be during the year. So that got us more in line with where we have been the past couple of years. So we're still at a very strong, like I mentioned, cash basis. So there's no concerns looking good going into the future. Disbursements, accounts payable, payroll, very similar to prior months. So about $9 million in disbursements, and then receipts also around 8 million, which is pretty typical this time of year, right? Getting some of those final billings going. So overall, very similar to prior years. And then looking at ADMs for our programs, so our membership. So this is our June data. So overall, our ALC programs, our June ADM was about 200, or was at 254, which was 17 higher than what we were last year at this time, and was also, what was it here? I have it written down, 7 higher than what we had projected in the budget. So overall, very good outcome with our ALC. We'd like to see that grow a little bit more, right? The more students we have in our ALC programs, the more it helps the sustainability of the programming just from a cost basis. North Star Online, another strong year, over 1,100 ADMs, which was 236 more than last year, and about 117 more than what we projected in the budget. So they're seeing still some strong growth. And it looks like that going into where we're sitting currently going into fiscal 26, just based on enrollments there. Career Tech, 96 ADM, which was 29 higher, which was, again, I mentioned this at some of the other reports, but we had some new programs at the Career Tech Center, construction, and another, I believe it was medical nursing, additional sections there. So that's good to see growth at the Career Tech Center. Special education, we're at 531 ADM, which is 46 higher, which we're also anticipating an increase for fiscal 26. That was slightly below budget, but from a headcount standpoint, it was pretty close. Our headcount was at 563. So right, ADM is the measure of time the students here during the year, but at any given point, the headcount gives you a better idea of how many students are potentially in the seats on a given day, right? So staffing has to also look at a head count. ADM is really more the revenue generating side of it. And we were, I mentioned we were slightly below budget there. Career, and then the care and treatment, we were at almost 100 ADM, 7 above last year. And again, that one's a hard one to predict. We're about 7 under budget, which was pretty close. But that one's a tough one, right? It's really based on need and of the students. So overall, strong ADMs for the year and very close to projections. So great work by the team, working with your member district special ed directors and working with the business managers to get those projections, because that really does help us with our staffing and budgeting throughout the year.
Maybe you said this already, apologize if I missed it. What was the budget for NSO?
The budget, we were
Did you expect that?
1,025 ADMs. So we're about 118 over budget. Yeah.
I see all those plus sides. I don't
Yeah.
remember seeing for every program. So kudos to every program for that.
Yeah.
And
And then I just have just questions for,
questions,
if there's any other questions.
So comment, I know in a traditional district enrollment matters, right? So you're looking for those plus signs. I do want to acknowledge in this space that when you think about our special education population, that is students that are increased their federal setting away from general education. And, you know, even though this is what we do for a living, we really want our students and your students to stay in your district. And we no longer need Fed 4 in the state of Minnesota. We are here, but I just want to acknowledge, we have to talk about that too with our directors of special education. And just what supports are needed.
Mhm.
before this goes.
I'm gonna be slightly contrary. Okay. Because I think about like the students and the families that do come to our meetings, right? And talk about the home that they have found in some of our programs. And so I think for me, if that the program that is best going to meet the student and the family at any given moment in time is what we have available. So I think historically, I do always struggle when it's like, the goal is to make sure that everybody goes back to the home district, to the member district, because if that's not what's actually in the best interest of the student, as determined by the team of people who knows them, who loves them, who has the expertise, then that's not what I want. So I just felt I wanted to. say that.
I'll be the diplomat and then. It's definitely both.
It's
right.
It is both. Yeah,
is
I don't
very
think
much
we're
both.
actually disagreeing.
No, I know. But I mean, there's that, I think I've talked about this as, you know, as a board member, when you're representing a home district, right? You're sort of sitting here acknowledging the failure of your home district to serve kids and, right? We also believe that, right? So all of those things are both true. I think like we're not in that world yet. Yes. So we haven't put ourselves out of business yet. Good job.
I think it's important on that note, to just reflect on the fact that, as Kristen said, finding the right place. And as much as, I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a failure, I would just say that being able to serve each and every, which is one of our mission statements in Edina, is a very difficult thing to accomplish. And you can't be all things to all people and do it all that perfectly well. And so what I always want to say, what Marcy was trying to get at, it's about the sustainability of the program, our program here in 287, which is what those pluses are about. It's getting to what the need is. I just wish that we had a much more enlightened perspective in our society and our larger government, that sustainability of it to meet that need is what's required. And each home district might struggle with that, which is why an intermediate exists.
Okay, Caroline.
I guess I just want to put into the space just the over-identification of, you know, our students of color into special ed. And how oftentimes when they are over-identified into special ed, it just leads to them quickly moving up to the levels of support in special ed, which, you know, feels like a prison to pipeline for them without a lot of successful outcomes. And so I want that to be in the space too, that for some of us and for some of our families, that's what this looks like, is part of that prison pipeline.
Thank you for that. I think that we all collectively have a responsibility about reducing that. So thank you for.
Good discussion. I think that we were gonna get into the.
Yeah, and the finance report
I'm
even.
really glad we did. I'm really glad we did.
Finance report brought it out.
Yeah.
What do we say? Budgets are morals with numbers attached? Yeah. Where we're at right now. Okay. Well, with that, I'll take a motion to approve this monthly report as presented. Moved by Crystal. Second by Kim. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I vote aye, and the monthly finance report is. Thank you, Brian. All right, we are up to the board business section of our agenda. The first item I have is the superintendent evaluation summary, which I'm just going to read because it's kind of scripted. This is the 2024-25 superintendent evaluation summary. The closed meeting date was June 26th, 2025, and board members in attendance, this is a weird order. I think it's alphabetical by the names of our districts. Zach, Ross, Birdman, Andreessen, Orcutt, Brackey, Long, Casey, Genestra, and Ross. Thank you. The board met in a closed meeting on June 26, 2025 to discuss the annual superintendent evaluation. Pursuant to Minnesota statute 13D.05 subdivision 3A, a public body may close a meeting to evaluate the performance of an individual who is subject to its authority. The public body shall identify the individual to be evaluated prior to closing a meeting. At its next open meeting, the public body shall summarize its conclusions regarding the evaluation. The meeting must be open at the request of the individual who is the subject of the meeting. Superintendent Dow did not request for the meeting to be open. So the meeting was closed. This is the next open meeting of the board, and the purpose of this report is to summarize the evaluation. Board members see Superintendent Dowd as a courageous, inclusive, and effective leader. They cite her calm, caring personality, her expertise, and her clear expectations as key components of her success within the district and as an advocate. Board members support continuing current practices, including building accountability with regard to the strategic plan and advocating for intermediate funding and policy needs. Finally, board members expressed appreciation for Superintendent Dowd for work on advocating for the iTrack apprenticeship program, updating district policies and leading the district through the strategic plan were all mentioned as highlights of her work this year. Overall, board members overwhelmingly support the superintendent's work and the direction of the district under her leadership. Okay. Because we don't have to do anything on that. Nope. Okay. It's done. Next up, we have the AMSD report. It was a while ago. Okay. What's the, the connections, I just meant the meeting. Was there anything from the last meeting that anybody would need to know?
No, but the meeting next Friday is the report from the state demographer.
Okay, all right. I knew they said there were a couple good ones coming up, so, okay, super. And the Connections newsletter is in your board book. Was there anything else you wanted to add on there? Okay, super. The school board calendar and the board event calendar are also attached to your board book. Make sure to check the Get on the Bus and Local 2209 board meeting schedules, those things on your calendar. And then I think we're at once on the table. So does anyone have anything to share? Yeah, Crystal.
I just, I think you started the meeting with this, and so I wanted to say a word just specifically to our 287 community. And so staff across the district, but in particular, I've been thinking about our team, our community at South Education Center, and how the events of the last, day and a half have, I can only imagine, like brought back incredibly like horrific, traumatic experiences from the active violence that we had at our own school just 2.5 years ago. And so I just wanted to say that I've been thinking of them. I'm sure we all have been. And I hope that they are taking care of themselves in this moment too.
And I asked specifically about them, and Marcy shared that there were some folks available to that staff specifically.
Yeah, let me throw in just a reminder, folks, at Brooklyn Center, our immigrant community they're just still hurting, and it affects our school. I mean, many of our students don't show up to things. We can't get parent engagement in anything because they're afraid. And so that it's still there, folks. We'll move on to the next. And personally, just keep my son in your prayers. My son is a Minneapolis cop. He was one of the first on the scene and hauled bodies out. That's just, you should not be able to see that.
No.
And what a bullet does to a little kid. I am becoming an advocate that we need to see the pictures.
No,
Well,
but thank you for sharing
I'm
that with us.
proud of him that he went to work today.
I would offer that I would be proud if he didn't go to work today.
Yeah.
And he took care of himself if he needed to. Just to say that too.
His Pete thinks he should show up to work today. Yep.
I don't want a beer, but I'm also cold too, because I did have one other thing I want to share, which was that I was able to attend the all staff kickoff on Tuesday. How many people were there? Over 1,000, right? Filled the big room at the Heritage Center. And it was fantastic. I want to give a huge shout out to Camille, our MC, and a huger shout out to Brent, our equity and inclusion coordinator, who was a fantastic game show host. I mean that, like, very literally. We had Wheel of Fortune, we had Let's Make a Deal, we had The Price is Right, we had The Price is Right theme song, there was dancing. It was really it was a really fun, it was really fun. And I also really want to thank this board. I got the opportunity to just address the staff really briefly. And I hope and I think that the message that they took away was that this board supports them and is supportive of the strategic plan and is not going to back away from equity or inclusion or social emotional learning. So I felt very confident in saying that on behalf of this board. So thank you all for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome back to Brooklyn Center anytime you would like.
Oh.
Love host.
All right. Does anyone have anything else? All right. Well, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. So, okay. Moved by Crystal, second by Kim. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye, and the meeting is adjourned at 8:06.
No, I thought I knew.
Good work to you.
Yeah, it's
You know,
I don't think it ever has done.
Donuts.